Hi everyone, I'm the Plant Propagator and welcome to my channel. If you want to see more of my videos, it would help me out if you could click on like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Today it is 88 degrees Fahrenheit in Southwest Florida, which is about 30 degrees Celsius. And what I want to share with you is propagation of Portulaca. Now, I love saying the word. I like the plant too, but the word is fun to say if you say it right. Portulaca is it's a succulent plant. Grows really all over the place, all over the world. In the colder climates, it's not cold tolerant, but here in Southwest Florida, it can be grown year-round. And the problem that I have, so I did purchase a couple of Portulaca plants at the local big box store. And what happened is this thing, because it just kept on growing, it got huge. And when a plant with one root system gets too big, at least for Portulaca, it just doesn't do well. So some plants just need to be trimmed and kind of cut back a little bit, and they'll put out a new flush of growth. And what was happening with this Portulaca is that it was growing so much, it kind of grew over a rock border that I had, and then when I was gardening, I stepped on the plant that was on the rock border and kind of cut a few things off, and it's like, okay. And then I actually took that and propagated that, and I'll show you that in just a second. This plant really just needs to be kind of cut back and trimmed, and while I'm cutting it back, I might as well make more. So this is a nice succulent plant. It does really well in full sun. It can handle drier conditions, and it is a succulent. So you got to be a little bit careful with how much water you add to it, and you can treat it differently, again, because it is a succulent compared to some of the other plants that I've shown you previously that you can propagate. So many of the other plants that I propagate, when I take the cuttings of the plant, I put them directly in water. And with Portulaca, you don't need to do that. So you can just take the cuttings, and it's okay if they dry out just a little bit, and actually it may be beneficial it is beneficial for many succulents when you take the cuttings just to kind of let them dry out a little bit. Otherwise, sometimes you'll get a little bit of rot. The soil that I use, that I'm going to use today, is the standard soil that I use for making cuttings and for doing propagation, and that is the Miracle-Gro moisture control potting mix. And this is what I love to use all the time. Again, with succulents, this holds the water and then releases the water when needed. You can kind of get the impression it might stay too wet, but it actually doesn't. So it retains just about the right amount of water that you need for this for most plants and for cutting. So it's a really good soil for cuttings. What I do is I put the soil in a pot like this, and I just wet it to start with a little bit of water here until it runs out the bottom right there. So I have pots here that have already been wetted, and it doesn't need to be really moist, but it does need to be wet before you do this propagation step. Also, a lot of times when I do propagation of plants, I use a rooting powder with Portulaca, and with many plants you don't need to, and today I'm not going to. So the rooting powder normally contains an auxin, indobutyric acid, that will cause root induction, and then once the roots are induced, then they grow into the soil. But I'm not even going to do that today. The one thing that you do need to know, that you do need to pay attention to, is that all of the leaves that are on these cuttings right here, most of these leaves need to be removed. So the leaves are, that's an area where water is lost from the plants, and it may not be as important with this because it is succulent, but most of the leaves on these cuttings should be removed. This is really simple. This is a question. So here's the cutting that I have. I'm going to remove the top of this cutting, down to close to where this leaf is. And then I'm going to remove most of the leaves on this cutting right here. And then I'll leave, you can actually take off, there's a main, there's a large growth coming out here on this axillary bud, and I'm just going to cut that off. So this is the important thing, is just to make it so that there's not too much on here that the plant needs to support. This is actually more leaves than I normally leave on the plant. The cutting is a little too big to fit inside this pot, so I'm going to cut it down to about the right size. So this is about the right size cutting that you want for Portulaca. So you can take, this is the pre-moistened potting mix right here. I'm going to make a hole in the potting mix with here, and I'm going to make another hole right here. And then it's a question of simply placing this cutting. It's easy. I told you it's easy. Just place this cutting in the hole, firm the soil around it, and that's all there is to it. All right, I'm going to do another. Here's another cutting right here, and I'm going to take the top off of this. I'm going to take most of the leaves off right here. Okay, and I'm going to take this this large bud off, and then what you're left with, a little bit big, you're left with a cutting about this size. And then, again, simple, the hole that I already placed in this pot, you put the cutting inside of it, push the soil down around it, and that's all there is to it. So I'm going to make a couple more real fast because I have so many cuttings, because the plant got so large when it's growing. It just, they do well, and when they do well, they're just great. So really quickly, I'm going to take a couple more cuttings and put it in these pots. Okay, so I've got two. I'm going to make two more after I'm done today. But the final thing that you have to do is to just kind of make sure that the soil is tapped around the stem of this plant that's in there. It helps to give it another drink of water. You got to be careful not to do too much of this with this succulent because you may get a little bit of rot with these plants. But this is all there is to it, and then what will happen over the course of a few weeks is you'll get roots to grow. The cutting will signal to you that it is growing, because the buds that are in the axis of the leaves will start to grow. So what happens, I did this plant about a month ago. This is actually the plant that where I stepped on the stem, and it just broke this piece off, and I just shoved it actually in an old pot with soil that I had. And it may be that there's some yellowing associated with this because the soil was so old, and I just didn't fertilize it. But this was done, I think, about a month ago, and then these buds grew out, and we can take a look for roots here, and you should be able to see that there's some nice root growth from that root ball. And because of the little bit of yellowing in the leaves, this is ready to go into the ground. Normally I'll wait just till there's a little bit more of a root mass, but it's okay. This should be enough. So this one is going to get planted, and I'm going to have plenty of these. And like I said, the Portulaca will do. They come in just a really nice range of colors, and some of them are really beautiful. And but just good sun, they can handle the heat, and they'll do well. That's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed a very short video on propagation of Portulaca, and I wish you success in your propagation methods. And happy propagating.